Today, we're tackling a massive topic, one that's fascinated people for centuries: the end of the world. We're going to be looking at a detailed prophetic roadmap, all coming from a single theological text that claims to map out the future, step by incredible step.
You've probably wondered about it, right? Are we living in the end times? It's a question people always ask, especially when things get chaotic around the world. So, are the crises we're seeing today just history repeating itself? Or could they be signs of something final? Well, that's the exact question the text we're looking at today tries to answer.
So, the whole framework we're exploring comes from this one particular book. It claims it can decode ancient prophecy and turn it into a super detailed timeline. Now, just to be clear, our goal here isn't to predict the future. Not at all. It's to understand the sequence of events as they're laid out in this one specific interpretation.
Okay, but before we jump right into the timeline, we gotta understand the rules of the game, right? The whole study of end times actually has its own name, and more importantly, its own way of reading things. And you really need to get this part to understand everything else that comes after.
And that official term, it's eschatology. It's basically the part of theology that's all about the final events of history. Death, judgment, the whole shebang. And this isn't some new fad, by the way. It's a field of study that's been around for thousands of years.
All right, this next part is absolutely crucial. It's the lens through which this whole roadmap is viewed. According to the text we're looking at, the number one rule is this: take prophecy literally. Unless the context is screaming at you that it's a symbol, you read it as it's written. This whole literal first idea, that's the key that supposedly unlocks the entire timeline.
So, where does this timeline kick off? Well, it starts with something incredibly dramatic. But it's not what you might think. Not an earthquake or a world war. It's something else entirely. The source text actually calls it a great escape for a very specific group of people.
And that event has a name: the rapture. The idea here is pretty wild. In a single, completely unannounced moment, poof, all living Christian believers are said to just vanish from the earth. The text really hammers home how sudden and unpredictable it is, saying it'll happen like a thief in the night. Absolutely no warning.
So you've got to ask, what's the point of something so startling? Well, in this theological framework, the rapture is all about deliverance. It's the mechanism that gets the church off the planet right before a period of insane global chaos kicks off. It's basically the starting gun for the final countdown.
Okay, so the church is gone, and at that moment, a prophetic clock that has supposedly been on pause for 2,000 years starts ticking again. And that kicks off what this text describes as the most intense, most chaotic period in all of human history, period.
And how long does this chaos last? The text is super specific: 7 years, exactly. And this isn't just some number they pulled out of a hat. It's tied directly to an ancient prophecy in the book of Daniel, what's known as his 70th week. So for the next 7 years, the stage is set for one last epic conflict.
All right, so let's walk through this 7-year timeline. It all starts with what looks like a huge win for world peace. A super charismatic global leader, who the text identifies as the Antichrist, signs a 7-year peace treaty with Israel. Everything seems great. But then, right at the halfway point, 3.5 years in, he completely flips the script. He breaks the treaty, desecrates a rebuilt temple, and demands that the whole world worship him. And that betrayal is what leads straight to the finish line, the massive final battle of Armageddon.
So you can really see the 7-year block as a tale of two halves. The first 3.5 years, that's all about a false peace. You've got a new global system, even a third temple rebuilt in Jerusalem. But the second half, whoa! It's the complete opposite. It's called the Great Tribulation, and it's described as this dark, twisted mirror image of the first half, a time of unbelievable persecution and divine judgment all over the globe.
Now, all this intense conflict doesn't just end. It builds and builds to one single, definitive climax. According to this roadmap, the end of those 7 years brings the moment the entire timeline has been pointing to: the actual physical return of Christ to earth.
And that return kicks off a very quick, very specific chain of events. Let's break it down. Step 1, the Battle of Armageddon ends, the Antichrist is defeated. Step 2, Satan is bound and imprisoned for 1,000 years. Step 3, this kicks off what's called the millennial reign, 1,000 years of peace and justice on earth. And then only after that 1,000 years is up do we get to Step 4, the final judgment, and then a brand new heaven and a new earth.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds like something from a sci-fi movie set way, way in the future. But here's where it gets really interesting. The text we're breaking down makes a direct, powerful connection between this ancient timeline and stuff that's happening in the world right now.
And that brings us right back to the question we started with. But now I have a bit more context. Why do people who follow this interpretation think these events could be just around the corner? Well, the answer, according to this source, is all about the convergence of specific global signs. So what are these signs? The text points to a bunch of modern developments that it claims are prophetically significant. For instance, the big one, the super sign, is Israel becoming a nation again in 1948. That's seen as the event that started the whole prophetic clock. Then you've got geopolitical signs, like a specific alliance of nations, Russia, Iran, and Turkey, which the text connects to an ancient prophecy about an invasion of Israel. And there are even technological signs. Think about the move towards a global, maybe even cashless economy. That's seen as building the plumbing for a future system of total control. And what about the explosion in travel and knowledge we've seen? That's interpreted as fulfilling a specific line that says knowledge will increase in the last days.
Now, the argument in the text isn't that these signs have never existed before in some form. The key, it says, is that they are all converging right now, all at the same time, all within the span of a single generation. And that convergence is what's seen as the flashing red light, the key indicator that the prophetic clock isn't just set, but it's about to start ticking. So, there you have it. We've just walked through one very specific interpretation of a prophetic roadmap. It's a sequence that takes us from a sudden rapture through a 7-year tribulation all the way to a 1,000-year kingdom on earth, with events happening today being pointed to as the road signs. And that leaves us with one final thing to think about. If this timeline really is a roadmap, what exactly are the landmarks?